Why, hello everybody, it's Matthew, your friendly neighborhood technician, and today I am working on a 2002 Volkswagen Passat. I am removing and replacing the rack and pinion. The symptoms of the vehicle were noises, steering noises coming from the front of the car. I first, just off the top of my head, after listening to some of the symptoms, suspected it might have been like a CV axle or something, or a suspension issue, but as I drove with the customer and listened to it more and more, I determined that it was probably going to be a steering issue. When I got underneath there and looked at it, I found that the steering rack and pinion was loose. The boots are busted on the steering rack and pinion and are pulled back, and it's been leaking just a little bit. So it is obviously time to go ahead and replace it. Now, it's somewhat straightforward. There's a lot that has to be removed, a lot that's got to come out and come down and stuff like that. So we'll just start off with, by first and foremost, jacking the vehicle up. Now, I place my jack stands in the same spot that the factory jack goes, and that's how I've got it jacked up on both sides. And then after you get it jacked up, you're obviously going to want to go ahead and remove your tires so you can get access in there. And then from there, you're going to go ahead and you're going to go under the engine compartment. You're going to remove your plastic cover here, and you're going to want to you're going to want to get the battery out of the way. And the reason for that is because underneath the battery is one of the bolts, is one of the mounting bolts for the rack and pinion. It's going to be right here. All right, and while you're at it, you might as well go ahead and pull out the grommets, the rubber grommets that are in here, because you can go ahead and clean out this whole compartment. And that's what I'm going to do also. I'm going to use some compressed air or a vacuum and clean out that compartment. Now, your second rack and pinion bolt is going to be right here, right next to the master cylinder. Okay, and then you're actually going to have a third one. And the third rack and pinion mounting bolt is going to be hidden underneath the vehicle. You're going to have to get down underneath here. And if you can look, if you can see it, where my finger is pointing, let's see, right here, you see this notch? The light's not very well, so the camera's not picking up, but if you see this notch right here on the VW Passat, that's where your third rack and pinion bolt is going to be. Let me see if I can get this in there. You see it right there? So that is right there. That is your third rack and pinion bolt. And you also got to come underneath here anyways to get the power steering lines off, okay? So the first thing I actually chose to do was to go ahead and separate the rack and pinion from the steering linkage. And you're going to do that. It'll be a pin in there. And here's your bolt, okay? It's going to be a pinch bolt. Here's your nut. It'll be 16 millimeters. You go ahead and take this off, and then you knock that pinch bolt out. All right, it's going to be back in here where my finger is. You just pull that pinch bolt out, and before you do, make sure that your steering wheel is locked in place, and that'll allow you to get all that out and separate it from the steering column there. So again, to start, you want to get the vehicle jacked up accordingly. You want to take out your battery and your plastic covering so you can gain access to your bolts. Go ahead and get your tires off. You're going to want to take off the tie rod end here, and then also your pinch bolt, and then you've got the three mounting bolts and a few other things to take off. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and the first thing I'm going to get started with is removing my tie rod ends. On your tie rod end, you're going to use a 16 millimeter bolt here, or a 16 millimeter socket, and then the top is going to be a 13 millimeter socket. Now, once you get the nut and the bolt off, you're going to want to take a punch, and you're going to want to punch that out. Like so. Just hit it with a hammer and punch that out. And then same thing with this one, with the top one. You could actually leave that in there, a few threads, and hammer that to get that out. So I need both my hands to punch this out, but I'll kind of show you how this one works. And so I just punch that out, and there you go.
Now for some of you, as you can see, there's some rust on here. This one is not that bad. That rust can cause it to be hard to punch out. So some of you, if you notice it's real rusty, then go ahead and get you some PB Blaster and soak that in PB Blaster before you punch it out, and it'll come out a lot easier. So now, let's go ahead and tap on this bolt here. It's hammer time. And it looks like we may not be so. There we go. All right. Go ahead and loosen that bolt up a little bit more. Give me some play there. Just gonna set it on top. Okay, so I need both hands real quick. I'll be right back. All right, and there you have it. Tie rod separated. We're in good shape there. We should be able to now move this so we can birth that out of there. Now we're going to do the same for the other side. Okay, and now I'm on the other side, and I just want to point something out. I can tell that somebody has worked on this car before. I suspect that the tie rod end has been changed, because if you notice on the driver's side, this is the pin and bolt that retains that tie rod, that holds that tie rod together, okay, to the arm and the wheel hub here. Anyways, so back to my thought here. If you notice the difference in these two, this one is factory. All right, this is a factory bolt and nut. This is not factory. This is, looks like a normal nut with a pinch washer on there, with a lock washer on there, and I think somebody just slid a bolt through here. I mean, it's been driven like that, so that's great and all, but the thing is that we're going to check out and see what this bolt is, because if you notice, this is made like this for a reason, and if I can, I would feel more comfortable replacing this back with a factory pin and nut than sticking just everyday bolt in here. Besides, it's a Passat. It's a good car, and I think this is just wrong. So, alright folks, I'm going to get this one apart and we'll take a look at it. Okay, so my biggest concern was that somebody had just placed a normal bolt inside of there on that tie rod end, but as you can see, they did their best to get the exact same type of bolt that they could get. And although I wouldn't have done it like this, I would have just went to the dealership and got another pin, another bolt, and another nut, so it's factory. I do understand why they did it like this, and it obviously has worked. So I'll just make a note of this and go ahead and probably reinstall it. I do got to go to the dealership to get a pinch bolt for the steering rack and column. So maybe I'll see if I can pick up a set of these. But if not, I'll make a note and I'll just leave it. Okay, so now we're going to go after these top mounting bolts. And this is where you're going to want to have yourself a good 12-point socket. Mounting bolts on the top are going to be 10 millimeter. So get you a good 12-point socket and an extension. And you're going to want to take this bolt out. And then you're going to go over here, right in front of, or to the side of the master cylinder, is the second mounting bolt that is accessible from the top. Okay, remember now, you've got a hidden mounting bolt underneath. And so you're just going to go straight up. Having an extension will help. I'm on it now. Okay, you see where that it gave you clearance there so you could get your extension and your socket in there, and you can get that bottom mounting bolt out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause it. I just wanted to show you where it's at. I apologize for the lighting if you can't see it. I'm going to get both my hands back to use now. Okay, and now that I've got the power steering mounting bolts out and everything disconnected, except for the power steering lines, my next step before I disconnect the power steering lines is to go ahead and remove this plastic cover in here. And you're going to do that by just unclipping your brake line that clips in right here. And then you're going to remove one 10mm bolt right here. Alright, this is what it'll look like once you have that plastic covering out. Now that I got the plastic covering out, if you notice, I got a big hole in my firewall. That's because I went ahead and my next step was to pull the rubber boot out. Okay, and now this will give me the play that I need to move this rack and pinion around so I can go ahead and get it disconnected from the power steering lines. Now, if you notice, I've got my rack and pinion pushed away from the firewall. I can't pull it out just yet, but I've got it pushed out enough so now I can get underneath here. I can go in from underneath and I can get at those two banjo bolts and I can get my power steering lines disconnected. So I'll show you how that's going to work out here in just a second. Okay, and you can kind of see how I've gotten up in there from underneath. Here's a side view. That first banjo bolt is going to be a 24mm bolt. And like I said, you're going to move your rack and pinion steering forward so you can get to these bolts, and they're not going to be easy to loosen up. So I'm going to go ahead and get this one off and get this drained out, and then we'll start working on removing this from this Volkswagen. Alright, and one banjo bolt is going to be a large 24mm. The other one is going to be a 19mm. So now that we have our banjo bolts off, rack and pinion disconnected, our suspension disconnected, I say it's time to try to start birthing this rack and pinion out of this vehicle. And you're going to pull your rack and pinion out of the driver's side. So just be patient with it. Take your time. It's a big part. It's heavy. So I'm going to go ahead and get to it, and I'll show you the end result. Alright, in order to get this out, you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to twist it and turn it and move it around. There honestly is not too much that can be damaged back in there, especially if you went ahead and moved everything out of the way. So let's get to it. I'm actually going to hand the camera over to my wife. You got to hold it by the edges. Okay, hold on a second. She's got her hand on the microphone. All right. So you need to hold it like that. Okay, here we go. All right. And as you're pulling this thing out, because you're birthing it, make sure you tell the car to breathe. Get some Lamont's breathing there. There you go. Push. Push. There we go. We got it. Oh, look at that. It's a boy. There we go. Oh, okay. Come on over here. Man. And the first thing we want to do is set it down to make sure it matches, and it does. There you go, folks. That's removal of the rack and pinion. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to mark my tie rod ends, and I'm going to remove them and install them in the exact same fashion on this. And installation is everything you just saw in reverse. Alright, everybody. Well, this is Matthew, your friendly neighborhood technician. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free. I try to be as interactive with you as possible and get back to you. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share the knowledge. Once again, this is Matthew, your friendly neighborhood technician, signing off.